Ladytron times Arrow album review. Let's chat about it. Hey friends, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning, here tonight to chat about this latest album from Ladytron. They are a UK-based synth pop and electro pop band. They've been at it since the early 2000s. Their debut album 504, honestly, I remember it coming out like it was yesterday. At the time, I had a ton of friends just pushing the album towards me no matter what. Meant 604. I'm sorry. It's been a long day, but you know what I mean. I have a real actual connection to the album, to be honest. In the early days of this blog, when it was a written blog back in 2007, it was one of the first 10 albums I ever reviewed on this. And it is a very solid debut album. I don't think it ever lived up to the hype that people gave it, because people were worshiping this album around me. And it has some great moments like Commodore Rock, Playgirl as well, but I thought that it needed a little bit more personality. Now, they followed it up with 2011's Light and Magic, which was even colder, even more robotic, but was also an album full of many hypnotizing grooves, and I actually really appreciated that. I honestly actually prefer it to their debut, and I know that's a hot take, but I'll follow up that hot take with an even hotter take. The band's material since then has changed drastically stylistically, and personally, I've always felt it was for the better. Ladytron dropped the whole robo-rock thing that they were doing for quite some time for a much more gothic-inspired synth pop, industrial, and post-punk sound. These are all things that I love. Some industrial thrown in there too, and I know people's opinions on this shift. It's a hot topic, but the results I've always thought were just so good. 2005's Witching Hour has always been a personal favorite of mine in Ladytron's discography. And while there were some consistency issues, I really did enjoy Velocifero as well. Now, 2011's Gravity the Seducer, I did end up enjoying, but it took me years to really enjoy it. I thought it was one of their harder to pinpoint albums. I mean, it's got some of their best tracks on there. I mean, Ace of Hearts is on there. But it was just so dreary, and they've gotten so far away from their original sound, I could totally get why some people were not into it. Now, shortly after, the band took quite a hiatus, 8 years before releasing their self-titled album in 2019. And I still stand by my review years later. I think it's one of their best albums in their discography. They just sounded so reinvigorated and full of energy, and I thought their songwriting was really sharp too. Not only that, for some weird reason, it stands to this day as one of my most viewed reviews of all time of my YouTube era. Now, it's been a few years, but I was so hyped to hear this album because I loved all of the singles, and overall, it's a very decent album from Ladytron. This album starts off with City of Angels, and for me, man, this is home. This is a track that just sounds like where Ladytron should be right now. Everything just seems to come together on this track. It's whimsical, it's witchy, it's got the right amount of dark as well. I mean, it's not heavy, it's got a very dreamy, hazy film over it. The production is really solid too. But honestly, this track has only grown on me since it dropped as a single. I think it's fantastic. I do really like Faces as well. This one is a little bit more direct and in your face. It's got that pulsating beat. There's a whole lot more synth work here. We're also getting one of Helen Marnie's more hypnotic performances on here, but that's where I love to hear her. You know, I've always enjoyed her as a front woman. She just has a real presence, a real commanding presence to her, and it comes out great here. This is Ladytron by the books, and I mean that in the best way. It's mesmerizing, it has its own real quiet intensity to it. You can also groove out to it in a weird way. I'm personally in the zone right now. I'm in my happy place. I'm liking this. Misery Remember Me is also really good too. I love the spacey, thick atmosphere on this track, and the production really stands up nicely. It's also one of the more euphoric tracks here, and it's just really full of life. It's actually really beautiful and heartfelt at the end of the day, too. I mean, I feel like Ladytron albums work the best when they kind of bring in a little human touch at the end of the day, and that's what we get here, and yeah, it works. There are, however, some pretty big blemishes and just some real ugly moments, like Flight of Angkor, for example. This entire track is a freaking mess. I mean, Helen's performance as a whole is so underwhelming. I don't know what happened here. I mean, as a band, the entire performance is just way too light and flimsy for my liking. I mean, I don't mind a lighter and airier track from Ladytron before. They've done that plenty of times. This completely gets me out of the groove of this entire album. I mean, yeah, it's colorful, but it's just brings me down way too many notches. I have a lot of the same feelings on We Never Went Away as well. I mean, I give this track some credit. It's very bright and colorful, borderline psychedelic at times. And Helen's performance as a whole is so much better on this track, it's not even in the same league. But I still feel like Ladytron are having a bit of a disconnect. This track's almost 4 minutes long, and I can't remember the first thing about it. It's really forgettable. And Sargasso C, I hate to say it, but this track is weirdly phoned in. Like, ridiculously so. This is a drawn-out track that is like 85% instrumental, and it's just so drawn out. Like, it's so safe. Like, way too safe for me. And, like, you know, once again, it's a couple of minutes long, but I can't tell you the first thing about it. It doesn't have the feel of a Ladytron track at all. And Time's Arrow, as the finale, I mean, that's kind of my thoughts on it. I mean, I do like the overall tension of the track. It's actually one of the most tense things here. But outside of that, this track is shockingly one-dimensional. One note, too. It just feels so underwritten, and this is the finale. This is the note that you're leaving on. I'm leaving this track, honestly, starving for more material. It's one of the shorter albums from the band, and it just really doesn't end off on a high note for me at all. Still, though, Ladytron do pull together a pretty cohesive album, and I still think they have a lot, and I mean a lot to offer. The Night, for one, is really, really good. I love how tense this track is, even though it brings in some warmly, you know, almost tropical rhythms, which is something that I did not expect to hear, but it is here on the album, and it sounds pretty good. It ends up actually coming off pretty epic and sunny and just nice. Like, if they were to go for a more kaleidoscopic sound, this is the ticket. This is the way to do it right here, because it does still come together as a Ladytron track, mostly due to the gloomy licks and the gothic imagery. It's an oddly fresh sound for the band. I wish we heard more of it. Hell, it gets fun by the end of it. And The Dreamers is pretty fantastic as well. I love the bulky atmosphere and just how suffocating this track is, even though it's super colorful and sort of kaleidoscopic again. It's moments like this that I look at modern Ladytron and I realize they still have so much to offer, and that makes me really happy. Even if it is a little underwritten, that chorus is a little bit sus. But overall, it's really nice still and adds a great deal of mystery to this album. And California, I think it's probably the best track here, which I did not expect to say. I love how shimmering and absolutely gorgeous this track is. It's one of the more hopeful tracks here, too. It's pristine, it's beautiful, it may be the most just immaculately produced track here. And like I said, it's oddly positive and sunny, which is kind of weird for a Ladytron album, but they do it justice. It sounds right. There's a lot of very decent material on this album. I still think Ladytron have a ton to offer, and yes, there are some dark moments. There's some real blemishes here once again. There's some consistency issues, and sometimes it just sounds like the band's phoning it in. But the quality of the good material here does outweigh the bad. I still think Ladytron, you know, are a very decent band, and right now they're still on a hot streak, I think. I'm feeling a very light 7 on this album, but let me know what you all think down below. If you liked the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, friends.